Good morning and welcome. Thank you for taking the time today to join us for this webinar focused on wildfire recovery. We recognize that some of you, your friends, your family, or communities have been severely impacted by wildfires in both 2024 and 25. The governor has made it a top priority for us to assist in finding resources to help you recover from those losses. And we are all committed to achieving that goal. For those of you that don't know me, I am Drew Palmer, Grants Integration Manager for Governor Gordon. The Grants Management Office is housed in the State Budget Department, where I work very closely with our team. So let me introduce a few of our members that are with us today. In the State Budget Department, we have Christine Immiger, who is the Administrator for the Grants Management Office, Diana Cabriales, who is the Deputy Administrator for the Grants Management Office, and both of them are also Senior Budget Analysts. We also have our Hagerty team, and there's too many to name individually today, but we couldn't be doing this without them. We will have Ryan Christian, who is a grant advisor with Hagerty Consulting, presenting, but I would be remiss not to recognize Rachel Knobloch as our project lead. Our state and local partners joining us today include Ashley Palzard with the Office of Homeland Security, Kelly Norris, our State Forestry Office, Bob Budd, with our Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Office, Jennifer Doring and Shelley Hood with the Office of State Lands and Investments, Ian Tater with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department, Carmen McIntyre with the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts, and Bart Stam with the University of Wyoming Ag Extension Office. As you are all aware, there has been a government shutdown and most of our federal partners are unable to join us today. Rest assured that they wish that they could be here, but they did work with us before October 1st to ensure that their information would be shared with you. I want to take a moment to recognize the following that have contributed to this presentation, but we do have one exception. Dylan McNally, who is the Supervisory Recovery Coordinator for Region 6 with the Small Business Administration, will be with us today. Those other federal partners who could not join us include USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, the Farm Service Agency, Rural Development Office, the Wyoming Small Business Administration, and the Wyoming Bureau of Land Management. Before we get started, let's review a few housekeeping items. This presentation will be recorded and will be posted on our website. There will be time at the end of the presentation for questions. You are welcome to put your questions in the Q&A box below or raise your hand and we will call on you. Please enter your name, title, and organization or local government that you represent in the chat. So if this is the first time that you're joining the Grants Management Office, let me take a moment to provide some information for you regarding our services. Governor Gordon launched the Grants Management Initiative in July of 2024. He recognized that Wyoming historically is ranked very low in receiving federal funds back to the state, yet we certainly pay our fair share into the Treasury. The governor specifically realized that in pursuing federal funds, we needed more resources and capacity across the state. The overarching goal of the Grants Management Initiative is to create a one-stop shop for resources related to federal and state grant opportunities and working to identify stacking and braiding options, including IRA tax credits or other direct pay programs, to maximize benefits to the state and local communities, along with small businesses and nonprofits and our tribal partners. It is the expectation that this effort will assist in laying the foundation for a viable solution in meeting technical assistance and resource needs of our communities long term. Christine will present in more detail shortly, but I wanted to also note that in addition, the Grants Management Office is working hard to follow all of the changes and priorities as we transition from the Trump administration to the Trump administration, and we continue to track programs from the Big Beautiful Bill, of which can be found on our website, the Grants Connect Hub. So in this webinar, our objectives will be provide comprehensive information about the various funding sources available for wildfire recovery for private landowners, households, small businesses, and nonprofits impacted by wildfires. We'll connect community members with state and federal partners who stand ready to help affected parties identify and apply for available programs. And finally, we hope to provide a platform for community members to ask questions and learn about resources and services that can assist them through the recovery process. So we have a lot to share with you, so let's get started. I am now going to turn the presentation over to Christine to kick us off.
Hey, thank you very much, Drew, especially for the housekeeping items. We are going to just talk briefly about the Grants Management Office. We've only been stood up for about the last year, 15 months, I would say. Next slide, please. Our organization is developed to stand within the state budget department itself, and we actually work very closely with the governor's office and Drew, who is the grants integration manager. Together, both of our entities come together to serve the Wyoming Grants Management Initiative, and that provides services and benefits to local governments, tribal governments and organizations, small businesses, nonprofits, even our own state agencies. And we also have the addition of federal partners who meet with us every 2 weeks to identify or give us a heads up about any upcoming funding opportunity streams that are Wyoming specific and would benefit our communities. For today's webinar presentation, there are people that are not listed in this organizational chart, and it's the farmers and the ranchers and the private landowners. The main takeaway from this slide is that if you are in Wyoming and you hear something today about an opportunity that you might benefit from and you would like to pursue it, the Grants Management Office can do that, and it will be free to you. We will get you to where you can be successful, especially when it comes to disaster recovery funds or trying to pursue some of those loan options through the SBA. Next slide, please. You heard Drew speak about some of our long-term goals. We established those through the first 2 goals of our office. We help communities and organizations in Wyoming support their priorities. We are not here to tell somebody what to do with their organization or what funds to pursue or what funds would be best for them. We help align their needs with what funding opportunities are out there. And once they wish to pursue a federal or state funding opportunity, we have the technical assistance services in place for all of the grants management lifecycle, from cradle to grave, from the time that you identify that you would like to pursue an opportunity or a grant or a loan, all the way through the time that you spend those dollars in the audit and the closeout process. And through all of those services and through all of the more than 550 technical assistance requests we've received to date, we are building long-term capacity so that people can assist themselves in the identification and the pursuit, the execution, and the management of those federal, state, or even private foundational dollars. Next slide, please. We keep our office goals very, very short and sweet, and it's because we bucket them into specific services. We categorize our technical assistance requests into 3 different buckets. Core support services, so they would provide services to a much broader audience. An example of that is today's webinar. We have also released grant management tools and templates that are available on our State Budget Department Grants Management Office resource page. We also offer group level support. So if you have participated or joined us for our training, our grant training at the Wyoming Funding Summit in 2024 and 2025, there is an example of that. And we have also started conducting regionalized trainings, with the first one being held on September 19th here in Cheyenne. We also understand and know very well, since the initiation and the development of our office, that the people who we are getting requests from, their knowledge of grants management and the grants management life cycle, it is on a spectrum. We have people that just get a job, they're a new clerk or they're a new treasurer, and they are given the hat of "you're now a grants manager," and they don't really know where to start. We have services in place. We will do one-on-one meetings to support the needs of that person. We also have people that have 3 or 4 or 5 years of experience, and they're just trying to go out and get grants and prioritize projects in their community, along with possibly responding to a wildfire disaster. We also have the people who have been grant writers and grant managers for 30 some years. And hey, they might need our services, and it might just be limited to a quick little review of their application before they submit it. But that is who we offer our services to. And if you didn't hear your name or your title get spoken today, that's okay, because what I said before is if you're in Wyoming and you're a Wyoming entity, our services are here for free for you to get. Before we before we track into the next part of the presentation, I'm going to hand it off to Kelly Norris and Director Bob Budd, and Ashley Paulsrud from our Wyoming Office of Homeland Security is going to speak. These are the individuals that are the subject matter experts. In theory, they are the horse's mouth. Anything that they say today is the truth. They are the knowers of all knowledge. So write down your questions. These are the people that can help you, and we are here to make sure that the people on today's call or the people who may be listening to this recording at a later date are able to be provided with the services that they are looking for. With that, Kelly, I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I just want to start by saying thank you to the Grants Management Office for hosting this, covering this. This wildfire is a really important topic. We have a lot to cover today, but not what you're going to learn is not one state agency, not one local agency, not one federal agency can do wildfire themselves. Wildfire management and how we look at wildfire is extremely integrated. And it impacts all of us in different ways. So I'm excited to be right alongside with Ashley and Bob as we talk about a little bit about wildfire and the history of wildfire in Wyoming. So I'll just start off. Historically, fire in Wyoming has kind of seen as not as much of our problem on state and private lands. You know, we had the 1988 Yellowstone fires. We've watched other states have communities burn over, but that hasn't happened in Wyoming. When we had big fires like the Mullen, that was all federal lands. And so we had a pretty big wake up in 2024 in what wildfire can do and impact when it comes to private lands and state lands, as well as with our federal lands, of course, but just what that really looks like when fire starts entering into our communities. And I want to give Bob and I want to give Ashley a little bit of, I'll pass off after I'm done with some of my slides to them and let them kind of speak on this too. But with that, what you're seeing here is your 2024 wildfire stats. So in 2024, we had a record fire season. Many of you on this call may have been very impacted by those fires. We had over 2,000 fires and we burned over 850,000 acres on all lands in Wyoming. Interesting enough, the impact of those acres, 70% of them were on state and private lands. So we literally were constantly responding from the wildfire suppression world on state and private land fires. And that's well above average. And we put that average there in the slide, 664 fires for just around 112,000 acres burned. The significant impact of what that did to many of our communities really, really opened our eyes. And now we're here today to talk about what does that look like, not only on the front end, but on the back end when we have to look at recovery. And what are the opportunities for private landowners when it comes to wildfire recovery after disaster, like some of our fires were. We'll go into this year. I wanted to provide just a little bit on the next slide into what we experienced this year. If you were to ask Wyoming's wildfire community what we thought of this year compared to last year, we would tell you it was a quieter fire season. Now, for some private landowners, they would say, this was the fire season for them, specifically those in the basin surrounded by the Red Canyon fire, a lot in the southern Bighorns in Washakie County, as well as over in Park County. We did have some pretty significant fires impacting private and state lands. So again, we did have a pretty active fire season overall. So far, these numbers are as of September. We did have over 1,300 fires. We burned 250,000 acres on all lands in Wyoming. But the percentage of acres burned on private and state has dropped. We're back to what we typically see. We are about 22% of that acreage burned is actually on private and state lands, about 56,000 acres. Again, we're tracking well above the number of fires that are starting in our state. And then we are still tracking above our normal acreage. So one of the things we saw this summer was the multiple days that we had of double-digit fires occurring. So while you as a landowner are seeing this fire that's happening on your property and you want to know why all these resources aren't showing up, it's likely because across the entire state of Wyoming, we have anywhere from 10 to 15 fires going. And we're trying to spread the resources out as quickly and as efficiently as we can between all the agencies, local, state, and federal. So a lot of experiences that we had both years when we had fires blow up had a lot to do with when all of them started. And again, we saw that occur this year, quite a bit around the 4th of July, and then quite a bit again in August. So what does that mean for us? I think moving forward in Wyoming, we really need to recognize that wildfire activity is here, wildfire suppression is here. We need to start thinking about how we're going to plan in wildfire holistically. We can't just think about wildfire when it's happening. We have to think about it way before it happens. And that's what this slide is about in particular, is thinking about a life cycle of wildfire, thinking about how we need to start with planning, and then we need to do prevention, think about suppression and recovery. So when it comes to planning, what does planning mean when we talk about planning for wildfire? These are working in our communities, thinking about what are the values at risk that we're trying to protect? What do we need to be planning for? Do we need more water capacity in different locations around our communities or out in our counties? What do we need to think about with evacuations? What do we need to be thinking about when it comes to the fuels that are around our values at risk? What needs to be treated first? And how do we prioritize that? So that's where your planning comes into play. And you can do that all the way down to the smallest scale of your own private property. Think about it as you walk through. What will that look like when it's a small fire or when it's a very destructive fire and there's multiple fires going on at the same time in the state? So what is prevention then? Prevention is those activities that really help us reduce wildfire impacts. I want to make it clear that prevention is not meaning that wildfire is not going to ever happen, but it's going to help. It's really important to think about prevention as a way to reduce the impacts of a destructive wildfire. How can we handle wildfire in suppression capacity to reduce the risk, prevent actual destruction of homes, of cattle, of all sorts of things that could happen. And that's when you do those activities through prevention. And then when it comes to suppression, when we do suppression, we are coordinating at all levels with your local counties, your fire districts, with your state, and with your federal agencies. That is planned. That is, we have actual activities that we train together, and then we do suppression together. And what we're really focusing on when we do suppression is how do we do it safely, right? How can we be both the most effective and safe? Because what we are about to do is send humans into people, some of our family members, into some of the most dangerous and hazardous settings to help put out a fire and stop it. So those are the things we have to train for, we have to plan for. And then when it comes to recovery, that is extremely important, and it's so dependent on how that fire impacts those lands and those communities within them. And again, it's how we adapt, how we're going to rebuild if necessary, and really refocus our efforts due to the changed environment. And I am going to stop there and give Bob Budd a chance to kind of also provide some input into this slide.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm Bob Budd. I manage the State Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust Program. We have two roles as it relates to wildfire. One in our standard role that we've taken on over the last 20 years deals primarily with prevention. And that's things like healthy forest initiatives where we're removing understory that may have come in and creates a situation or an ecological setting in which fire occurs not in a natural way. Treatment of invasive annual grasses, particularly cheatgrass throughout the state. That's a high priority for us as well, so that we remove a fuel source that is very, very volatile. We saw that a lot last year in the Northeast. We saw that this year with the Red Canyon fire. Those are all things that we do routinely. We are limited by the amount of funding that we have. The legislature has been very good about adding funds for that over the last few years, and we will continue to pursue that with them. But that's one where we would encourage people to work with multiple agencies. As an example, in Platte County, what we've done is we've got a good group there of the Weed and Pest District, the Conservation District, the fire warden and the fire people, and then game and fish and landowners to develop plans that will in time reduce that risk of fire. And so that's number one of what we do. After the fires of 2024, we were asked also to handle the funding for restoration, which also includes prevention. And a specific example of that on the House Draw fire, that funding included the work that went into going out and doing the scouting, looking at where we had fire, mapping the severity of that, looking at the potential for invasion by cheatgrass or by other non-natives that could be highly fire active, and then also treating for areas that needed restoration done. And that all has been put in place. Most of that work has already been done this fall. We had $49.5 million to allocate to that purpose. Of that, 46.5 has already been allocated in those areas. But that seems like a lot until you start looking at the fact that we're talking about 1 million acres, and the cost of treatment, the cost of restoration per acre is significant. So those are the two areas that we work in. We coordinate with Kelly and with other agencies. I think one of the important things that we all are very careful about is staying in our expertise area and our own lane. We don't go in and start dealing with suppression, as an example. That's not our bailiwick. That's Kelly and her partners. But on the prevention side, we probably pick up a bigger role as far as the funding there, using the expertise of other agencies, whether that's forestry or BLM or others. So that's the role that we play, and we're happy to help if we can. Our biggest limitation is how much money we have available to put out on the ground. And with that, Ashley, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Bob. I am Ashley Palsard. I am the Grants and Finance Section Chief here at the Office of Homeland Security. We really play two key roles when it comes to wildfire. We, like Bob said, we stay in our lane. We definitely don't step into the suppression side, which is Kelly's lane, but we do coordinate state and federal resources in support of local jurisdictions. So our job is really just to be the helpers and get the local jurisdictions kind of what they need. And then in terms, our other role is recovery. We really step in all things recovery in all sorts of different types of disasters, wildfire included. And that kind of brings me to the disaster declarations and the different designations that are available following a natural hazard or disastrous event. Of course, we're pretty familiar with the presidential disaster declarations. A lot of times those, go up through the governor. It's a request that he can make to different federal programs for disaster declarations. But there's also other federal funding that can be opened based off a governor's emergency declaration. And those are things like the Federal Highway Administration, the U.S. Department of Transportation. They can activate their emergency relief program following a governor's emergency declaration. And then the Small Business Administration can also open some funds for that.
Hey, Ashley, I think we're having a problem with the slides. I don't mean to interrupt your presentation. There was either a lag or something going on, and you were talking and the slide was not on the screen.
No worries.
So sorry. Thank you very much.
Nope, you're good. Thanks, Christine. Yeah, so as I was talking, these administering agency declarations often come in the form of a governor's emergency declaration. As the slide shows, the U.S. Department of Transportation has funding that they can activate following a declaration. Small Business Administration has some funding that they can activate. And then the governor's office through Kelly can request that FEMA issue a fire management assistance grant, FMAG declaration, to support. The FMAG declaration really supports fire response and suppression. And I think Kelly will talk a little bit more about what those are. So, Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Okay, we'll talk about FMAGs. We missed a whole slide about what state forestry does for prevention a little bit early, and covered all the kind of highlight the state where we're at on prevention, but we will try and cover that when we start going through grants. FMAGs. So FMAGs are available to the state, and what they are is they're a declaration. When we have a fire that is meeting certain requirements, and it's happening very fast, actually, typically, where we believe there is going to be quite a bit of cost associated, disaster associated with it. We work pretty closely with the local resources on the ground and look at applying through a process called the FMAG process. So when we receive an FMAG fire, 75% of the federal cost share can cover, and it's a reimbursement. So the remaining 25% still the state has to pay for. And it's very specific to the dates that FMAG is declared and approved. And then we have agreed upon end date. So it doesn't actually cover the whole costs, 75% of any fire that the state has to pay, but it does cover a significant chunk. So again, we're going through a process of seeing, does this fire meet these criterias? We get a one-time chance to apply through FEMA. And then again, at the bottom of that slide, it's going to cover what it actually covers and what it actually reimburses. And that's when you bring in a team, the camps, all the costs with the camp, the repair and the replacement of tools, the mobilization and demobilization of all the resources that do show up to these fires, all the equipment that is used, and the materials and supplies to put that fire out. Next slide. We'll go into where we were at with 2024 and 2025 FMAG fires. In 2024, we had 4 fires that were declared FEMA FMAG fires, and we've had only 1 so far this year in 2025. So 2012 was the last time Wyoming saw 4 FMAG fires. That was our last pretty large fire season. What you're going to notice in the list of the 4 fires from last year in 2024 is Happy Jack Fire was March 1st, and the Elk Fire was September 27th. So we had fire season almost all year. From March through November, we were having fires, and you can see Pleasant Valley was in there. It burned into the Haystack Fire. So both those fires combined were an FMAG fire. And then we had the House Draw Fire that also was approved FMAG fire, which happened to be the largest fire in Wyoming history. For 2025, what you see is Red Canyon Fire was approved. And what you're seeing is the dates of the approvals. Typically, they're right within the first 48 hours of that fire starting. And then I am going to pass it back over because I believe the next slide is for Ashley to cover the difference between disaster and FMAG, because we did have some fires roll into a disaster declaration, and we want to make sure we kind of cover and clarify the differences.
Thanks, Kelly. Yes, we did have specifically a few of our FMAGs did roll over into a presidential disaster declaration. We did have 1 declaration in 2024 that was declared for the House Draw, Constitution, and Flat Rock fires in Johnson and Campbell counties. The way that the disaster declarations work is once we have hit enough of the programmatic threshold To be eligible to request the disaster declaration, the governor sends that request in directly to FEMA, and then FEMA takes a look at the request and they either authorize public assistance for that disaster or individual assistance. It's a different program that they have for that disaster, or they may deny it altogether. So we were fortunate enough to get one presidential disaster declaration declared for those two counties. The majority of the damage was for a rural electric co-op that had some infrastructure in Johnson and Campbell counties both. So far in 2025, we have had no presidential disaster declarations. They haven't been requested, mostly because we haven't hit the thresholds required, the amount of damages needed to be able to request these declarations from the federal level. Both disaster declarations, I see on the slide here, we talk a little bit about major disaster declarations. Those are your presidential disaster declarations. We also talk a little bit about emergency declarations at the federal level. So at the federal level, what an emergency declaration can do for us as a state is it can bring in federal resources, both equipment and resources, but also that personnel or direct technical assistance. Emergency declarations normally don't come with any sort of funding to cover any sort of damages. The funding mostly comes during that major disaster declaration. But both disaster declarations, FMAG and the presidential disaster declarations can provide a wide range of federal assistance programs. And like I said, the president can either declare FEMA public assistance, which I think we'll have a slide on a little bit later, but FEMA public assistance mostly focuses on that publicly owned infrastructure. And then individual assistance is more for households and kind of the individual recovery. So I think I'm going to turn it back now to Christine to talk about some federal and state funding opportunities.
Yep, thank you very much, Ashley, because I know that, with the wildfire management life cycle, a lot of terms get thrown around. There's a lot of confusion. There's different things that are required or different criteria for each grant. So there are several wildfire funding opportunities out there. Some of the more critical ones for the state of Wyoming are centered around infrastructure needs, drought, livestock, hay and grazing, fencing and facility repair, and then ecological sustainability. Next slide, please. We are going to go through, I believe, each of these just to highlight some of the more pertinent areas, and we are going to invite our state and federal partners to speak on each of these. I believe that I am going to pass this back to Kelly Norris. Before I do, I am going to just highlight very quickly that the opportunities that are presented on these slides are also available in the opportunity scan that is available on the State Budget Department Grants Management Office website. We will send out that opportunity scan to our participants after today's webinar. So Kelly, take it away.
All right, thank you. I am not sure if we can go all the way back up to one of my slides that we didn't cover.
Yeah, we can. Which one would you like to go over?
There, stop right. Okay, so state forestry implements 3 different types of federal grants when it comes to wildfire planning and prevention. And we help oversee these programs with your counties. What you're seeing here is a list of your counties that operate and apply for not only planning, but education projects as well as mitigation projects across their communities. So all of these grants that we're going to cover in the next slide, many of them are associated with one, planning, which is your community wildfire protection plans. They're called CWPPs. And that is where the counties are lining out where your highest risk is and where we need to do work in prevention. And again, this is associated with federal grant funding from the Wildland Urban Interface Program, as well as through the Community Wildfire Defense Grant Program. So currently we have 13 active CWPPs within the state, and we have funded and received more funding for for many of these. And with that, you have 15 counties that have mitigation coordinators whose sole job is not only to be working on these CWPPs, but also implementing many of the projects that are lined out in the CWPPs. And so again, fuels mitigation programs they're very different, vastly different from county to county, how they're set up, who's running them, and how that looks. State Forestry helps interact and integrate into those and help support those counties and communities on where they are at. If you are interested or have any questions about any of these upcoming grants that we're going to cover, please reach out to your local state forestry office, your local fire district, or we do a lot of work with our conservation districts when it comes to any fuels mitigation or planning support. So we can roll back down to the next slide here. And I will start talking about the wildland. Well, I think your CAFA, the CAFA was up first. The Community Assistance Funds adjacent to National Forest Grasslands, that grant is very specific to areas that are adjacent to U.S. Forest Service lands. This grant has no match requirement. And again, any area that's eligible has to be eligible within Forest Service lands, not BLM lands, which is a little bit of a kicker for some of our counties, and that have active fuels treatments in the area. And so again, we have done quite a bit of work through these. We've had quite a few successful projects across the state. When I think of the Story Fuel Break, that was the CAFA grant. Sheridan County, where the Wildfire was, all the work that was done in the TP Folly area, that was done through CAFA projects. So again, these are very useful projects and can be done focused on hazardous fuels treatments. When it comes to the Wildland Urban Interface Program, which you see is the second one, this one is a competitive grant. It's for fuels treatments, for education, mitigation planning on all non-federal lands. Really, it's to start focusing on that reducing of hazardous fuels. And many of these grants are used for the community wildfire protection plans. This has a one-to-one match, and it has a limit to up to only $300,000 per request. And as you can see, state government agencies or organizations are the only eligible entities, but that's where you work with state forestry and your local state governments on applying to these. Next slide. So the last grant that we implement that is a very new grant through the IIJA funding is the Community Wildfire Defense Grant. So this is really focused on your at-risk communities to develop and revise CWPP and to carry out projects that are described in those CWPPs over the next 10 years. State, local governments, nonprofits, it really opened up who can apply through these grants. We help coordinate the application for these grants. And just recently, they made an announcement that Park County was awarded one of their grants to update their CWPP through the funds of this grant. Some key things to remember when it comes to these fuels mitigation grants. We've been right around a 50% success rate in our grant applications. This is really competitive, and we will work with you on how to apply and when to apply on these grants, because many of these we're competing with all the Western states or sometimes with CWDG across the entire United States. Since 2025, you can see we have put $14 million in just under 10,000 acres treated across Wyoming through these 3 grants. And I will stop there and pass it on to the next grant applicant. Yes, to Ashley.
Thank you. We'll be talking a little bit for the next couple of minutes about the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We talked earlier about the different types of disaster declarations, presidential and FMAG. This Hazard Mitigation Grant Program may be authorized, and may is the key word these days. It may be authorized following either an FMAG declaration or a presidential disaster declaration. Eligible entities are state, local, tribal, and territorial governments, and some private nonprofits. Areas impacted by the declaration, so whatever declaration was the resulting of this HMGP, those areas impacted are prioritized. So for example, we were given HMGP dollars. It was authorized following the FMAG declaration, as well as the Presidential Disaster Declaration in 2024. So the impacted areas, Johnson, Campbell counties, they were prioritized over other applicants that may have come in just because they had the greatest need. This program is focused on reducing or eliminating potential impacts and fostering resilience against the effects of disasters. The mitigation projects that are eligible, I will remind everyone, this one is a 75% federal share, 25% non-federal share. But the projects that are eligible, wildfire mitigation, we see a lot of flood risk reduction, flood after fire, property acquisition, etc. Projects that primarily address ecological or agricultural issues, unfortunately, are not eligible for the FEMA programs. I will throw in there that the same is true. Agricultural losses are not eligible under the FEMA public assistance program. We didn't really get to cover that, but it is unfortunate, but FEMA doesn't cover anything agricultural loss related. Forest management activities are also not eligible under this hazard mitigation grant program. Prescribed burning or clear cutting, creation of fire breaks, also not eligible. And like I said, in 2024, we received hazard mitigation grant funding as a result of the multiple FMAG declarations, as well as the disaster declaration. In 2025, even though we have had the FMAG for the Red Canyon fire, no HMGP funding has been awarded to date. And I think, I'm not sure, is Ryan maybe going to take over now?
Yes. Our federal partners were not able to be present with us today, but our friends at Haggerty Consulting are able to step in and give a brief overview about these federal programs. Ryan, be my guest and take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Ryan Kristen, and as mentioned, I'm with Haggerty Consulting, and my background is supporting communities and states to recover from major disasters, specifically the last few years, a lot of work with post-wildfire recovery. So I'm here today to speak to some of the federal programs that are available. Again, as mentioned earlier in the program, I'm not speaking on behalf of these federal agencies. Unfortunately, they are not able to be with us today, but I'm here to give you an overview or kind of a quick introduction on some of the programs that they offer. I'm going to move fairly quickly through all of these programs because we have a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure there's time for question and answers at the end of the program. So jumping right into it, one of the first programs I'll speak about is through USDA with the Farm Service Agency, and that's the Emergency Conservation Program. This program is designed to assist farmers and ranchers in repairing farmlands that may have been damaged by a natural disaster. It provides a cost-share assistance to repair and restore these lands. Eligible entities are farmers and ranchers. And I'll move on quickly to our next program, the Farm Storage Facility Loan Program. This program is designed to purchase, construct, or upgrade facilities and equipment, store or handle eligible commodities. This program is also available to landowners, landlords, leaseholders, tenants, and sharecroppers. And some of the areas in which this program may be helpful post-wildfire is things like preserving feed quality during wet seasons or reducing spoilage for grain and feed storage. So these are two of the programs that we see through USDA. We've got several more USDA programs to speak about, but next I do want to turn it over to Bart Stam to speak about livestock haying and grazing needs and some of the state funding opportunities that are available.
Thank you, Ryan. So I'm Bart Stam with the University of Wyoming Extension. I'm based in Thermopolis, Wyoming, so in Hot Springs County, where we were impacted by the Red Canyon fire. And so I'm grateful to have the chance to talk a little bit about our hay donation program, or website that we started, and I'll give you just a little bit of background about why we did that. Last year, during the House draw fire, some of our extension offices in that area were involved with trying to get hay that people wanted to donate to those who needed it, who were impacted by the fire. And so they were involved with trying to put people together that had hay, and that with people that needed hay. So this is not an official program that we've started. It's really just sort of a grassroots effort. And our communications and technology people in Laramie on campus were able to put this website together where people who wish to donate hay can list the hay that they have. And then people who need hay that were impacted by a fire can also put that on there. So on this slide, you'll see a QR code there. If you scan that code, it will take you to our University of Wyoming's emergency hay assistance page, and you can see listings of people that have hay, and you can see somebody there that also stated that they needed hay. And then we also helped out quite a bit with just some local donations of hay as well. On this webpage, if you're on that webpage or you're on that later on, you can scroll down to other resources for post-fire recovery. And the one that I specifically wanted to mention as well was the Wyoming Stock Growers Association has a link on our hay donation webpage there where you can people can donate money. And then you can also apply to receive that money that's been donated. So again, this is not technically an official state program. It's certainly not a federal program. It's really just a grassroots effort that we with the University of Wyoming Extension wanted to help organize and streamline the process of getting hay from people who wanted to give it to those who needed it, while minimizing the amount of time that we as the University of Wyoming Extension were storing hay or handling hay. We wanted these donated hay supplies to go straight to the people that needed it, straight to where the livestock were that needed it. I also just wanted to take a minute to remind people that the University of Wyoming Extension has an office in every county and on the Wind River Indian Reservation. I know that I'm biased, but we have a wonderful amount of resources to help out with people. My own background is I'm a range management educator, so I help folks with livestock grazing issues around the state. And I have been working and hope to work more with the people impacted by fires, and especially this Red Canyon fire here in my county. So I would encourage people, if you have questions about this, to go to that page. You can contact me, or for sure contact any of our extension offices in each county around the state. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share that with you, and I'll turn it back to Ryan.
Thank you, Bart. And we'll continue talking about livestock, haying, and grazing, going through some more of the federal funding opportunities. And what I didn't mention previously was a lot of these opportunities are available without a presidential disaster declaration. I think that's an important distinction, and coordination for receiving assistance through these programs can occur through GMO and through the Farm Service Agency. So continuing along, looking at the Livestock Forage Disaster Program, the LFP, which is really designed to cover grazing losses. This program offers financial support to livestock producers who experience losses from a disaster such as a wildfire or a drought. This is eligible for livestock producers who own or lease grazing land or pasture land in affected areas. Our second program within this category is the Emergency Assistance for Livestock, Honeybees, and Farm-Raised Fish Program. Quite a name there, but this program is designed to be an extremely flexible program. And unlike the LFP or the LIP, these are programs that focus on very specific areas. This emergency assistance program was designed kind of as a catch-all for everything else that doesn't fit into one of these other programs neatly. And program is eligible for any producers impacted by a qualifying disaster. All right, next slide. We're continuing with USDA programs through FSA, and we have the Conservation Reserve Program, the CRP, designed for emergency haying and grazing. And this program includes emergencies and managed haying and grazing provisions that can be temporarily authorized for producers. It allows landowners to have haying and grazing on CRP land without terminating their contracts. It helps with livestock producers to obtain critical forage. And it also supports recovery of burned ranges or reducing grazing pressure on damaged lands. This program is also available for farmers, ranchers, and producers in eligible counties. And next we have the Livestock Indemnity Program, the LIP. And this program provides direct financial assistance to producers for livestock deaths as well as severe injuries resulting from natural disasters or severe weather events. And this program is available for livestock producers who own or lease grazing or pasture land in areas affected by drought or fire. Next, we have the Federal Crop Insurance Program, the FCIP, again, another USDA program. And this helps farmers and ranchers protect their lands and their income against losses caused by natural disasters. I think an important thing to note here with the FCIP is that you have to be enrolled prior to the disaster event. To be eligible for this assistance, you cannot enroll after an event has occurred. And again, this program is also eligible for farmers and ranchers, like I said, enrolled prior to the impacting event. All right, so next we will move on to ecological sustainability needs, federal funding opportunities, again with the USDA, this time with a program through the U.S. Forest Service. This is the Wood Innovation Grant Program. This is another program where we do not see a need for a federal disaster declaration to receive assistance from this. But this program helps reduce wildfire risk by creating demand for lower value wood, supporting rural economics, forest sector jobs, advanced sustainable construction. And it is especially useful for communities and landowners looking to create economic opportunity. One way through utilizing burned wood for lumber or biomass. So this program offers a variety of options through the U.S. Forest Service for using that timber or impacted areas. This is eligible for nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, institutions of higher education, state, local governments, tribal governments, and special purpose districts. Next program we have is the Forest and Woodlands Resource Management Program. This is through the U.S. Department of Interior and BLM. This program manages public forests to promote healthy ecosystems and reduce wildfire hazards. While it does not provide direct cash assistance like some of the USDA programs, it does offer local economies to benefit in tangible ways through restoration, support, access to resources, and additional community partnerships. This program is eligible for federally recognized tribes, state and local governments, nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, and tribal organizations. All right, continuing with our ecological sustainability needs, we look at two programs offered through the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. The first being the Brownfield Program, which supports the cleanup and sustainable reuse of brownfield sites, providing competitive, non-competitive funding, as well as technical assistance to help redevelop sites and also strengthen disaster resilience. This program is available for local governments, quasi-governmental entities, redevelopment agencies, state and federally recognized tribes, and nonprofit organizations. We also, through the US EPA, have the Superfund program, which is responsible for cleaning up contaminated land that has been exposed to potentially hazardous materials. And this program is also available to local, state, tribal government, and certain nonprofit organizations. And again, both of these are applicable post-wildfire, where we may see contamination to land from hazardous materials. Moving on next, within our federal funding opportunities, we're looking at reclamation and restoration needs, going back to some USDA programs available with the Farm Service Agency. Our first is the Emergency Forest Restoration Program, and this provides financial and technical assistance to private forest landowners to help restore forest land that may be damaged by wildfire events. This program is available for forests that are owned by non-industrial private individuals, associations, corporations, or private legal entities. And this program does have a $500,000 per person limit. Next, we are going to the, I'm sorry, and also I'll mention that these programs are both not required to have a presidential disaster declaration. So next we go to the Tree Assistance Program, which provides financial support to landowners that have lost trees due to natural disasters like wildfires. It covers 65% of the replacing costs for the trees, with more than a 15% mortality. The Tree Assistance Program provides assistance to orchis and nursery tree growers who lose trees or shrubs due to the natural disaster, as well, not just wildfires, but we can also look at drought and other storm events that may impact those forest areas. All right, continuing with reclamation and restoration needs, we move next into USDA programs through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the NRCS. And both of these programs are tied to watershed and land restoration. Our first is the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, the EWP. And as we know, post-wildfire, we can have significant impacts to watersheds that can lead to all kinds of events, from stream contamination to debris flows and landslides. So these programs are designed to help restore those affected watersheds. And with the EWP specifically, it can be used for debris removal, stream bank reshaping, drainage correction, vegetative cover, and restoring some of those burned soils that can help prevent those debris flows or those secondary impacts post-wildfire. The EWP program is eligible for private landowners to pursue this program through a sponsor. That sponsor can be a city, county, town, or a conservation district, as well as federally recognized tribal governments or tribal organizations. Our next program available through USDA NRCS is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, the EQIP. This program provides financial and technical assistance to farmers, ranchers, and forest landowners to help implement conservation practices to basically help with improving water, air, ground, and surface quality. And this is also available for farmers, ranchers, forest landowners, they are eligible for that if they own or rent agricultural land. All right, moving next, it looks like we are going into our Small Business Administration programs. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Dylan McNally with SBA.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dylan McNally. I'm the Supervisory Recovery Coordinator from the U.S. Small Business Administration's Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience, and it's great to be on the call with y'all in Wyoming this morning. So I'm going to quickly speak to two types of disaster loans that we have available. And these, I want to clarify, are for 2024 wildfires. As Ashley mentioned, no requests have been made for wildfires that have occurred in 2025, but we do have some declarations for 2024 incidents. The two primary types of disaster loans that we have are physical disaster loans. That's if you've had physical damage to your property or personal belongings, and then economic injury. That is if you are a business owner or a private nonprofit organization and you have had an impact to your operating costs and expenses as a result of operating capital, I should say, as a result of the fire. So these physical disaster loans, again, we've got these for a handful of counties that for 2024 incidents. Same goes for the economic injury disaster loans. I can share some additional information about that if you have any follow-up questions about which counties would be eligible. Just to clarify, though, if you did have physical damage in 2024 and are interested in an SBA disaster loan, or if you had economic injury, please reach out to me. We are able to consider your application. However, because the application deadlines have passed, a justification may be submitted as to why you weren't able to apply on time, but we are able to consider those requests. Just real quick, so I can speak to the counties involved in the 2025 or 2024 rather wildfires where we have declarations. So we've got physical damage and economic injury in Bighorn County, Campbell County, Johnson County, and Sheridan County. These were all four declarations that were made in November of 2024. And then we've also got our economic injury disaster loans activated in Teton County, Wyoming, as a result of that Teton Pass landslide and the closure of Highway 22. That's it from SBA. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. We appreciate yours, Dylan. We are extremely appreciative that you are here with us today. The next thing that we're going to track into is some state funding opportunities. We have a rather new one to present. I'm going to hand it off to Shelley Hood from OSLI.
Thank you so much, Christine. Yes, we have a new program, the Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan Program, where we can loan up to $750,000 to eligible small businesses that are affected by a governor-declared natural disaster. Time is of the essence, though. Please keep in mind that applications must be submitted with no later than 24 months after the declaration by the governor. The loans can be used for anything that is impacting your business for the most part, such as fencing repair, replacement of livestock, buildings, vehicles, inventory. Within reason of a business expense, this loan can be used for that. We have a QR code on screen that will take you to our webpage that has a lot more information regarding the program. If you have a financial institution that you prefer to work with, please send them our way. We have financial institutions that can register with our office to be able to supply these loans out to our small businesses. Thank you so much, and we'll turn it over back to Ryan.
Thank you. And now we're going to talk about other wildfire-related impacts and needs. Again, we're continuing with federal funding opportunities. So we are looking at the USDA Rural Development programs. And the first is the Single Family Housing Guaranteed Loan Program. This is designed for assisting approved lenders in providing low and moderate income households with opportunity to purchase, build, and rehabilitate, improve or relocate a dwelling in an eligible area. This is eligible for applicants that meet the income eligibility requirements and some of the other program requirements. Next, we look at multifamily housing programs, again, with the USDA RD programs. And this is to assist property owners through loans, loan guarantees, and grants that enable owners to develop and rehabilitate properties specifically for low-income, elderly, and disabled individuals and families, as well as domestic farm laborers. Eligible entities are multifamily housing works and the owners of its direct and farm labor housing loan properties. Our third program listed here for the USDA Rural Development Programs is the Disaster Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, DSNAP, which offers food assistance to low-income households with food losses or damage caused by a natural disaster. Eligible entities for this program are individuals in a declared county that is a disaster county with eligible FEMA individual assistance included. So this is going to be related to a major disaster declaration that we heard discussed earlier.
I think, Christine, we're passing it back to you.
Okay, great. So the next part, oh wait, the next slide says Wyoming Game and Fish support, actually.
Yes, we had a transition.
Yes, Ian, I am not trying to usurp your state programs. You go right ahead, okay?
Thank you so much, Christine. Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ian Tater, Statewide Terrestrial Habitat Manager for Wyoming Game and Fish Department. I work with habitat biologists across the state and partners to implement habitat projects. You may be asking yourself, what role does the department play in wildfire disaster recovery? And the short answer is really, we help coordinate efforts. And so we do this by collaborating with a wide variety of agencies and entities, landowners. Examples of that include weed and pest districts, conservation districts, WWNRT, state forestry, NGOs, state and federal partners, and landowners. And so really just want to make sure folks understand that that is a role that we can play. And a key point for consideration is department personnel can work across all land ownerships. And so we can provide that bridge in the case of a wildfire that also knows no boundaries to go in and help do the sort of actions that you see on the slide here. So that might be treating invasive annual grasses, replacing fences to wildlife-friendly specs, restoring and repairing habitats, etc. So really just want folks to know that we're here to help. We're able to bring some resources to the table as it pertains to being able to aggregate some of those resources from a variety of sources. And we really are here to help and interested in hearing from folks if they have some needs. So really, that's what I have for you today. And with that, I'll hand it off to Carmen with WACD.
Good morning. I just wanted to run through these really quickly for the WACD. As you see here, conservation districts are a local resource for technical and funding assistance. There are 34 conservation districts across the state. In every county. And we support proactive forest management with state forestry and others by working with landowners on projects. We administer funds to work with landowners for wildfire planning, prevention, and recovery. And because conservation districts are locally based, we are in a position to work with landowners and our other partners to implement these projects. As you see in the second bullet here, conservation districts are very well versed in identifying creative solutions to fund forest improvement projects. And in looking at creative ways to do that. We are familiar with a lot of different opportunities that are out there for funding and technical assistance just because of the nature of districts and the different resource concerns that we often work with landowners to address. It's important to note with this, and I wanted to mention this as I think a lot of our partners would agree, we do work with landowners on a voluntary basis. So with our familiarity with these programs that are out there, we often get questions about the stipulations that are associated with those monies. And so we definitely want to make sure that landowners are fully aware of the programs that are available, that they understand the stipulations that go with those. And if it's not a good fit, whether it's for logistical reasons, financial reasons, whatever the case may be, conservation districts do their best to work with those landowners to make sure that we're exploring all the options that are out there and that we are finding a good fit that will work with them. We also provide support to local, state, and federal partners in wildfire recovery by assisting with inventories. And with that, what I mean is that not only are we working with landowners earlier on when it comes to just basic resource management concerns and making sure that we're addressing those through forest improvement projects, but we also are present as wildfires do occur. We participate, we've actually had several district staff participate in the last couple of years in inventories post-fire to help expedite the process of getting communities recovery funds that are needed. And just to tie in with what I've pointed out in these other bullets, conservation districts are often the boots on the ground with some of our other partners that are on this call when it comes to planning and implementation measures for both near and long-term recovery processes. Conservation districts are at the table with our state and federal partners when it comes to forest resource management planning, implementation of those measures that are listed in those plans. And they really are a local voice when it comes to that and making sure that other partners or coordinating is needed at the local level and with our state partners as well to make sure they understand that we are a source of local knowledge. And with that, just being able to help facilitate getting those funds on the ground with the expertise that we bring to the table. We also I also wanted to point out that conservation districts regularly provide support for other resources too, as far as infrastructure needs, and that's basically pre and post wildfire recovery. We often are pursuing funding and working with landowners to install watering tanks, pipeline and fencing projects to address those resource concerns that are out there, both from the standpoint of agricultural production, but also even things with regards to wildlife habitat improvements. And lastly, I wanted to point out with the Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts, we are a voice for those districts and the communities that we're serving, both from a policy and budgetary perspective. We work very closely with all of the agency folks that are represented here today, as well as our federal partners that were unfortunately unable to be with us. And we do that in terms of having things like coordination calls where we're talking about ways to address the resource concerns that are out there, making sure that we're getting resources on the ground where they're needed. Our executive director for the WACD is often in Cheyenne, especially in the legislative session, making sure that our state leaders, as well as our congressional representatives, are aware of the programs that are really important for us to be able to implement at the local level to get people the resources they need. WACD also is a conduit for conservation districts when needed, when it comes to developing agreements with our partners, but also facilitating the transfer of funding from state and federal partners to local resources on the ground. So with that, I will close my comments here and would be more happy to answer questions at the end of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. We really appreciate the work that the Wyoming conservation districts do. Sometimes it goes unrecognized, but it is very noticeable to us and our team here. I just want to pause real quickly. You know, we heard from a lot of different people. You obviously know that there is a lot of coordination support and technical assistance that can be provided across many and several state agencies. I would just like to point out, we do have a couple slides on drought. I believe that the SBA would like to speak on those slides. Can we please go back to slide 36 before we jump into gaps in wildfire management and assistance, please? Dylan, you are ready to go if you would like to.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. I appreciate it. And just to quickly add for the audience here, we do have in 2025 drought declarations, what we call Secretary of Agriculture declarations when there is a drought in a declared county. And these apply in some shape or form. There's actually a number of declarations that apply to Wyoming County, 17 and to be specific. And all Wyoming counties are covered in some way. The dates on those drought declarations are a little bit different. So, you know, we will check to see if the drought impacts that you're having are related back to the dates that your county is declared for. But there is a drought declaration with economic injury in every single Wyoming county, all 23 of them right now. Again, these economic injury disaster loans and the drought is really just economic injury. So physical damage related to drought does not apply. These are working capital loans to help small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, and small businesses engaged in aquaculture, as well as most private nonprofit organizations meet their ordinary and necessary financial obligations that can't be met as a direct result of the disaster. So just wanted to make sure I shared that. Thank you so much, Christine.
Hey, no, thank you, Dylan. We didn't want to miss out on that. You know, even with all of these federal fund opportunities and state opportunities that we have highlighted today, we still have some gaps in our wildlife management assistance life cycle. I'm going to open it up to Kelly and Bob to speak about these small issues that we have and the gaps that we face and see as a state.
Sure, I don't see Bob hopping on right away, so I'll start. When it comes to gaps, I think I can help address even the question that was in the chat about the state considering funding county fire smart programs in the future. And that is the gap that we're actually seeing, is that there isn't state funding set aside in particular for wildfire planning, education, or mitigation. And when there isn't that, as we brought up before, when we compete with other states across the United States for these fuels mitigation grants, it's much more competitive. And when we don't have money at the table that we can bring forward and leverage, it makes our grant applications a lot less competitive than within other states. And part of the barriers that we're seeing is, as I pointed out, we have quite a few mitigation coordinators across the state. The majority of them are dependent on getting those grants that's funding their work and themselves. And as we continue to not compete as well, assistance from state funding could really help the situation. In the past, the state of Wyoming has funded some forest health and mitigation funds, specifically during the mountain pine beetle epidemic and across the forest. It lasted for a couple different bienniums, but we have not seen funding come back to take on some of this type of work. And I think that is a gap that we could continue to have conversation about and a need is different types of funding beyond just federal funding, because the other challenge we have with all of the federal grants, and we ran through a whole bunch of federal grants that we're implementing. So state forestry implements all federal grants when it comes to fire prevention, mitigation. With that, we don't have any state funds with that. That is a huge challenge and one that is hard to plan for the future and grow and develop and implement. And it's an area that I think we want to continue to have conversations around. I don't see Bob on here yet.
I'm here.
Are you gonna pop up? Okay.
Yeah,
I
I'm here.
want to give a couple of moments to pass on to you because I see what time it is too.
Yeah, and I don't have a whole lot to add to what Kelly just said. The issue is that we don't have reliable source of funding that bridges between years. So we're back each year asking for things that are based a lot of times on reverse looking and other times hopefully looking forward. So an example of that would be a year ago, and I'm not casting any blame here, but a year ago we asked for money for prevention. And that got stranded when the supplemental budget didn't pass. So we ended up with an expectation that couldn't be met. And we don't have any kind of a disaster fund or any kind of a fund that goes out looking, down the road at what it will cost. But I think the other part of that, and one that we're working on here, and I know Kelly is working on it as well, is countywide plans that take into account fire and invasives and ecosystem health. And if we had those for each county to say strategically, these are the areas where we need to focus on prevention, then we could go a lot further and we'd have a more reliable idea of what it's going to cost each year. So that's a gap that I think we all need to be aware of and need to continue to work on.
Thanks a lot, Director, and thanks a lot, Kelly. You guys are really at the forefront of the wildfire recovery efforts here in the state, and it's good to have you guys on this webinar to help identify some of those gaps. When it comes to trying to assist with those gaps and anything that we may not be able to have at the state, the Grants Management Office has prepared what is called a wildfire recovery guide. It summarizes the federal programs and wildfire impacted landowners, households, small businesses may be able to apply for directly. It also has some contact information. The other resource that we have developed that I mentioned earlier that we will send out to the registrants for today's webinar is our opportunity scan. Our opportunity scan is kind of lengthy. It's supposed to be that way. That's because there's so much funding out there that you can apply for. So very quickly, quick snapshot, you can see that there's a number of loan programs, around 29 grant programs, and then 26 other programs. If you haven't already checked it out, please do so. If you want to give us feedback, please do that too. We're more than open to it. We just ask that if you do see an item on our opportunity scan that interests you, please contact us so that we can get you in contact with the correct state or federal partner to make sure that you're successful. Just some highlights from our grant research, and then we'll track into the question and answer session. When we conducted our analysis and our opportunity scan on wildfire resources, we identified that more than 2/3 of the program do not require a disaster declaration or designation. Very interesting to us because usually that 33% part of the pie chart we are only familiar with through people like Kelly Norris and Ashley Paulsrud. So very, very good information. As we transition through this federal administration, we see that there is a landscape shift or change, and that's why we're here at the Grants Management Office, so that we can conduct an analysis and identify those impacts and make sure that we position ourselves strategically whenever it comes to funding our projects in our state. So with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that any of the participants may have. Drew, I believe we actually got some in an email that we could start with. So
we did, but I want to say that is a lot of information. And I think the only way we could have made this webinar more comprehensive was to have our federal partners on here with us. But Ryan did a great job in filling those gaps. And I do want to say before we get started with the Q&A, this is a lot of information. Please don't get overwhelmed. Please don't get paralyzed into taking action because there's just too much stuff out there. Remember, we're here to help you. The Grants Management Office will help you work through it. Any of the presenters and their offices will assist you. Go to your federal offices with NRCS, FSA, your local ag extensions, or your Wyoming Association of Conservation Districts, because they will help you work through all this and find the right strategy that fits your needs to pursue, and we can help you with all of those things. So don't get paralyzed. All right, Christine, what's our first question?
All right, first question. Will there be a FEMA disaster declaration for the Red Canyon fire like there was for the fires in northeastern Wyoming in 2024?
I think Ashley can help field that question.
I sure can. As the Red Canyon fire was progressing, we were in constant communication with entities being impacted. And we did not receive any reports of publicly owned infrastructure damage. We heard lots of homeowner and individual property losses and impacts, but there were no losses reported by publicly owned infrastructure, which is required for a FEMA disaster declaration. Just to throw it out there, we have to have over $1 million in damage to publicly owned infrastructure to be able to even qualify to ask for a disaster declaration. So at this point, the answer is no, there won't be a FEMA disaster declaration request for the Red Canyon, just because we did not receive any reports of publicly owned infrastructure damage.
I knew you could field that. Christine, I think I see 2 questions in the Q&A as well.
Yeah, well, let's grab those. First one, would the HAY program be applicable in drought impacted areas? Bart, are you able to answer this for us?
Yeah, so I really appreciate the question. It is my intent for this HAY program to be live for other parts of the state in future years and for all kinds of disasters. So my answer to that question right now would be yes, it will be. And along with that we want it to be useful for what we unfortunately know will be future fires in other parts of the state as well. So please look to that page in the future for assistance with helping with the hay donations for all kinds of disasters, along with other disaster related resources.
Thanks so much for that information, Bart. That's very good detail to know. Drew, the next question that we have is, how do programs such as FMAG work alongside existing fire insurance coverage that an entity might have? For the person that poses this question, we may have to take this back to our team. We may have a rather lengthy response.
I guess I'd ask Ashley or Kelly to help us get started with that.
Yeah, so the FMAG is a recovery tool for the state wildland fire costs. And it's really specific to the costs associated with wildfire suppression and what we have to pay for with the resources to put out that fire and what we agree to in a cost share. So it's very state specific, state forestry, and associated with our costs. When it comes to wildfire and when it comes to insurance, I know there was some challenges in a couple fires, specifically Red Canyon and I think Elk, where the percent of containment did cause some challenges with insurance companies. And we're well aware of that, and we work with the insurance companies and with the local resources on trying to get to a good place of percent of containment so that we can sell homes and do all the things we need to do with our insurance companies. So I'm not sure if that's associated with that, but I know there was a couple of challenges this year and last year associated with percent of containment and when insurance companies could continue to do what they need to do.
Thanks, Kelly. Christine, I see we're coming up on 11:30, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. And what I would say to anybody that has any additional questions, please put them down or feel free to email our office. We will get answers to you and get back to you. I also want to encourage everybody to use our YGAP program at the Grants Management Office, the Wyoming Grant Assistance Program. We can help you. We all collectively might not be able to guarantee we'll find you what you want, but we can tell you that we'll turn over every stone in helping you find assistance. So from all of us, we sincerely appreciate your time this morning. I want to emphasize that our delegation, our governor, our federal partners, state agencies, and the Grants Management Office are ready to assist and provide the resources you need to be successful. We are committed to supporting you, which is essential in making big, wonderful Wyoming the place that we all want to live. So let's remain vigilant and working together, invest in Wyoming, and promote stronger, more vibrant communities. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.